Tonight's talk is kind of related to something that a few people have asked me about lately. I'm going to lower this down so I'm not craning my head. The first question was yesterday in Tai Chi. One of the students asked me about this idea. When we practice Tai Chi, we try to even out the breath so that it's dead even. And your inhale is 5 seconds, your exhale is 5 seconds. When you are doing this and just practicing Tai Chi, there has a tendency to be kind of like a natural variation in the pace that you're going at. So as you're doing postures that are a little bit more demanding physically, maybe your breath speeds up a little bit. As you're doing something that's more relaxing, your breath slows down. And the student asked me, what do I think about the idea of training with a metronome and something that goes exactly on rhythm so that you know when your breath is exactly even and when it's not. And another student this morning asked me in Tai Chi about the idea of some kind of natural fluctuation in your heart rate and your respiratory, and said that, like, asked me, are we aiming for a dead even heart rate, or is it okay if there's a little bit of fluctuation? So I'm going to talk about these things, and I'm going to talk about the bigger picture, the more general idea of ups and downs, which is what this talk is called. So when I started martial arts as a kid, I was like this. Every day was like this. And there would be times within a single day when I was on top of the world and I felt amazing about life, and it was like probably while I was eating cereal in the morning. And then, I get to school and life goes like this. It's just a crash. It's a violent whiplash kind of movement. And when you're young, this happens all the time. Hormones have something to do with it, and just your inability to understand life and all of that. And you would think that it disappears when you get older, when you understand how life works and your hormones aren't so out of whack. But the truth is, life continues going like this. And when I started practicing this style of martial arts and meditation and mindfulness with Sifu Brown, my main teacher over the years, it became very obvious to me that I had actually been doing this completely unbeknownst to me. Like, life had always had this violent whiplash kind of out of control feeling. And it's not like anything crazy had been happening in my life. My life was just a normal kid life. But normal life goes like this. And many people, if you guys have not really been doing a lot of meditation or mindfulness, and you haven't really been taking the time or placing your attention on your internal state, you might not really be sure what I'm talking about. Well, most of you guys watching have done some of that. And so when you start to pay attention, you experience this. And you experience it because with your practice of being able to slow down and breathe and get some control over your emotional state, you get some amount of evenness. And when you go from things are crazy to things are a little bit even and I have some control over my mind, you don't notice it that direction as much. What you notice is when you go from even back to crazy. And if you have done any, length of time with meditation, for example, like over the years you've meditated with regularity, and then maybe you've taken a few days of a break, or you've just done like token meditations, after a few days, you start feeling it like you're going crazy. This is what you're feeling. You've gone from a nice, calm kind of, not complete control, but a more controlled state of mind and way of being, back into a crazy storm, up and down, whiplashy way of feeling. And when you go back to it and you realize, oh my God, I've been living my life like this up until now, how did I survive? That's not a great feeling. It feels very jarring and jolting, but it is a great realization to have. We want to fill our lives with these realizations of, I can't believe I've been so stupid. I can't believe I've been doing this the wrong way for all these years. Because when you get that recognition, then that allows you to, with some introspection and some effort, to start to do things the way that you want them to be done on a regular basis. So, back to the specific questions. The idea of practicing the breath on a metronome. If you spend a decent amount of time trying to slow down your breath and trying to even it out, you will accomplish it to a certain degree. You'll notice that as you're practicing Tai Chi, as you're practicing meditation, and then in your everyday life, your breath is more even, your breath is more full and deep, and that has a couple of very nice effects on you. You are going to be more relaxed and calm. You are going to be more energized. You're not going to feel like as drowsy and sleepy because you're actually taking in oxygen and the energy that you need. And when you stop doing that for a while and you go back to your breath is just all over the place, you recognize that. So you might start to wonder, is it a good idea to train my breath very specifically to keep it super even like on a metronome? And the answer that I give tonight is the answer that I gave yesterday, which is maybe. If you take out a metronome, or you can do something much more accessible to most of us who don't have metronomes. You can just count the seconds clicking on a clock. And you count to 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever, and on the inhale, and you count for the same amount on the exhale. If you are getting it pretty even, then that's good. If you're trying to get it exactly even to the millisecond, you are only going to be met with frustration. You're talking about an organic process here. You're talking about a natural process that has ebb and flow, and you will not get it to be exactly perfect, precise. But you'll get closer, and as long as you are not using, if you are doing this kind of training, counting seconds or on a metronome or whatever, and you're not using that as a crutch, then I'm fine with it. The problem comes where whatever it is that you're using to even out your breath, you start paying too much attention to that and you start needing it. And now it's like, well, every time I do breathing exercises, I've got to have the metronome going, or I got to be counting the seconds on the clock. Well, that takes your mind away from where you want it to be. It puts it on this other thing. And most horrifically, what if someday you didn't have your metronome? Or what if someday you didn't have your clock? I have this really morbid kind of bizarre mental exercise that I do every once in a while, where I ask myself, if this is going to be my practice, is this the way that I'm going to meditate, or this is the way that I'm going to do breathing exercises, or this is the way that I'm going to do forms or whatever, could I do that in jail? Could I do that if I was marooned on a desert island somewhere? Could I do this with just absolutely nothing other than, myself? And usually the answer is no. If that's true, if the answer is no, then don't get attached to it. If the answer is unequivocally yes, I can do this no matter what my circumstances are, I can always count on this. First of all, I'm going to suggest that there are very few things in the world like that. But sure, if you can absolutely count on it, then go ahead and get attached to it. You're going to find that you can count these things on like one finger. So be careful with that, but try it every once in a while. There are actually lots of different things that we try in Tai Chi or that we might try as drills for meditation that have a purpose of basically shining a light on something. So like in Tai Chi, when we practice really quickly, that shines a light on where you are less sure about your form, like what you don't know as well, or what is a little bit clunky. What do you need to rep more so that you're able to do that? That's not the same as doing Tai Chi, because you can't do Tai Chi super fast and do all the other things that we want to be doing, allowing your breath to slow down naturally and not make it a thing that's stressing you out. So look at it as a drill. If you're trying to even out your breath and you want to use a clock or a metronome and you do this from time to time, great, then set it aside. And don't expect or need for your breath to be dead even, because that's just going to mess with you. It's never going to happen. The more useful, take with you anywhere under any circumstances type of drill that I recommend for a breathing exercise, for example, is just count your head. So I'm inhaling and I count to 5 or 10 or whatever my count is in my head, and then I exhale and I count to the same. So there are many different breathing exercises that we practice. You can practice just deep diaphragmatic breathing, making sure that you're inhaling and exhaling from the belly, and count to 10 on the inhale, count to 10 on the exhale. You can do triangular breathing, or I think triangular breathing is the most common term for it, where you're inhaling and you can hold it for the same amount of time that you inhaled for, and then exhale for the same count. So it's 10 inhale, 10 hold, 10 exhale. You can do squared breathing, where you're holding at the top of the inhale and then you're holding at the bottom of the exhale. And there are lots of different breathing exercises out there, and many of them are based on the same idea of just being able to control your breath and focus your mind on it. If you are obsessed with getting it dead even, then you're going to be sorely disappointed by your breathing exercises. But if you're just trying to get it within about a second, then you'll be able to accomplish that, and that's going to give you all of the benefits that you need. There is no real benefit to having your breath exactly even to the millisecond. The same idea with your heart rate. So your breath and your heart rate are tied completely together. You will not be able to. You can try this right now. In fact, let's do a quick experiment here. You can go ahead and feel your pulse on your neck or on your wrist or wherever you want to feel it. And you're breathing at whatever rate you're breathing right now. And then start breathing really quickly. Quick, shallow breaths. And then just feel your pulse. Your pulse is sped up along with your breath. If you continue doing that for a while, you'd notice that your breath would speed up even more. Even more so if you're exerting yourself physically and you're really using that energy in your body, which causes you to need the heart rate to speed up to pump the blood and pump the oxygen through your body. And that's great. It should happen. So the heart rate is the same idea as the breath. It's not exactly the same, and it is not 100% going to be in lockstep. But as your breath speeds up, your heart rate will speed up. As your breath slows down, your heart rate will slow down. And that's natural and normal and should happen. One of the students was asking me this morning, should we be aiming for a dead even heart rate? Because that's not really healthy. And of course the answer is no. In the same way that you can't really get your breath to be dead even, you can't get your heart rate to be dead even, and you wouldn't want it to be. Because as you are using more energy and you need to breathe more and you're exerting more force, then your breath should follow that and your heart should follow that. So this got me thinking about the idea of just these natural ups and downs in life and in practice, and even in our very specific drills with the breath and meditation and all of that. we live in duality. Duality, in the way that I talk about it, being basically the state where there are opposites and there is separation, and some people use the word to mean different things, but basically when we are in an unenlightened state, we are in ego consciousness, or just, even trying to be in Mushin or something that is not quite there. We're not quite enlightened. This is our experience of life. It's got ups and it's got downs. And the truth is, when we do become enlightened, or just for that moment when we are connected to a Mushin type, no mind, meditative state of mind, the ups and downs are still happening. It just doesn't bother us. And we can in fact just step away from it, and we can observe the ups and downs without getting dragged into it. So this reminds me of a story from Karate Do by Gichin Funakoshi. This is a book that we have at the dojo, and some of you guys have read it before. And I'm going to paraphrase the story, but basically Funakoshi is this master of karate who is walking around the countryside with one of his students, and they get attacked by a band of ruffians, and they're trying to rob them, let's say. And they attack Funakoshi sensei, and he is just basically playing with them. They're attacking him with everything that they've got. Let's say it's 5 fully grown men, and they're trying to really, damage him, kill him. And Funakoshi is just playing. And eventually they get fed up and they just give up and run away. There's a similar story about Musashi and practicing with the sword, similar stories with Ueshiba Sensei. But this student who was with Funakoshi asked him about it. He confronted him right after this event happened, and he asked him, "Sensei, you could have killed them easily. You could have just like that just ended them. But you let them go and you didn't harm them. Why not?" And Funakoshi basically said, if you're getting attacked by a 5-year-old who's really trying to hurt you and has the worst intentions, and you beat that 5-year-old up, you are not a martial artist, and you're not any kind of decent human being. A martial artist that has a massively greater skill compared to the person that's attacking them has no need to respond in kind, any more so than, unfortunately, as we've seen in the news, a police officer or some kind of peacekeeper who's responding to an unarmed person who's not really capable of fully damaging them by pulling their gun or choking or whatever. And I understand that there are different situations with different details, but let's just say that you're Funakoshi walking through the woods and 5-year-olds attack you. You don't need to kill them. The reason that he didn't, though, is not because of his physical skill. Because there are many people out there who have a vastly higher skill level, or who have guns, or who have, a much higher ability or propensity for force, yet don't use it. The difference in this case was that Funakoshi knew and had the state of mind in that moment not to respond in unkind force. Even though they had intention to do damage, it was not the intention, it was their actual ability to harm him that he was responding to, because he was able to totally stay in the moment and keep himself relaxed. This is an incredibly important skill for us to have as martial artists in physical confrontations, but more importantly and more often in day-to-day confrontations when we might be dragged into something that we don't need to be dragged into. Somebody is trying to start an argument with somebody, with us, And you can either allow yourself to get dragged down into that state, or you can stay above it. And if you are constantly allowing yourself to get dragged, that's what this is. Life is going to try to drag you down, and if you allow yourself to go down with it, that's where you'll be, and then you'll have this violent, shooting up and down and all of that. So what we want to be able to do through our practice with breathing exercises and meditation and mindfulness is to recognize as soon as we start getting pulled in whatever direction, and then just basically even it out, right? So you can imagine if you guys have driven in the snow like me from Detroit, I had many opportunities to practice what you do when you start fishtailing in the snow. And I have both responded well and responded poorly. One time I was driving in the snow and I got kind of sucked over into the rumble strip in the snow. I overcorrected and ended up doing 360 donut across 5 lanes of traffic on, I think, 75 north. And thank God there were no cars out, because I could have probably died or killed somebody else. And that was all because of a dramatic overcorrection in the wrong direction. Responding or reacting in a poor way in the moment. But I've also done the other way. So after I did that, I kind of researched, what are you supposed to do when you start fishtailing? And you start fishtailing one direction, you're supposed to turn into it so your car kind of evens out. And you research that to make sure that's the correct advice, because I'm not driving in snow anymore. So don't sue me. But what happens is you're finding yourself fishtailing out of control, and all you do is just a gentle readjustment. You steer yourself immediately right back on track. What this allows us to do is take ourselves out of this way of responding to life and experiencing life and turn it into this. And this still has ups and downs, as you notice. We're not turning it into this. You might be aiming for this, but never actually getting to this. You're going to end up with still a little ups and downs. And this is as long as we are in duality, and as long as there is judgment and ego mind, we're still going to recognize when things are going poorly and when things are going well. What we want to be able to do is let go of that judgment and just allow ourselves to be in this even state. So when we are responding as you might to a fishtail by just gently correcting, instead of going like this, you'll end up like this. And you will still, as you guys know, when you're way down here, this allows you to appreciate the highs, and when you're way up here, this allows you to be afraid of the lows. You're still going to have a little bit of that, because you're still a human being, and until you are enlightened, you're still going to be in this place. So you will still appreciate the highs and the lows. It's just going to not be as crazy. And this is life. This is how it goes. We are human beings, and we are experiencing it. So we practice being able to even it out, and we practice being able to even kind of step out of it and look at it and observe the ups and downs without getting attached to them. And still, as long as we're in this body, in this life, we will experience them, and that is fine. So I was using the analogy of waves in the ocean in Tai Chi yesterday. It's very apt for this. You can go out, and you guys heard last week in my talk, if you're watching it, that I've been swimming a lot, and some days I'll go out there and the water is incredibly cold, and it's the last thing that I want to do, but I get in there anyways. Some days I'll go out, it's super choppy. The waves are crashing hard onto the beach, and even as you're out there swimming, you're just being sloshed around by the waves. And then there are other days when you go out, and it's pretty even. It's not glass, but it's close to glass. And of course, that's much nicer. It feels great to be out there swimming and to just be out there, floating. If you're trying to surf, then you don't like that. You want the other kind of waves. But I'm not surfing, I'm swimming. So I love it. And the ego mind, the ego, is like the wave. The wave is coming in from the ocean, and it's getting up to the shore, and it's, putting on a big show. It's trying to be dramatic and huge and make lots of noise, and sometimes it just kind of piddles out and it's pretty unimpressive, and sometimes it is super loud and frothy and amazing. But that's a wave, and then it immediately just recedes back into the ocean. And if we are going through life like all of this violence, and we are that huge wave, and we're trying to make as big of a splash as possible, and we're really attached to that, then when we finally get to the end of our journey and we crash down onto the shore and then recede back into the ocean, it's going to be really rough. That's what death is, right? When we recede back in to wherever it is that we came from, and we're really attached to our individuality, then it seems very dire and scary. And it doesn't have to be that way. If we recognize that we are a wave in the ocean, and as soon as we crash into shore, we're just going to come right back to the ocean, that kind of mindset in the face of death, or in the face of even ego death, is going to allow us to face that with a lot more calm and respond well to it. It's going to be pretty tough if we live our lives like this to, at the very end, be like, okay, everything's great, I'm calm. If we practice during life being like this, then when it comes time to crash onto the shore, it's not going to be all that dramatic. We're just going to kind of like slide into place, and that's it. And you don't have to practice this mindset with your intention on just dying well, although that helps me sometimes to think about it that way, but just living well. If you are always kind of living in the way where you feel like you've got to make a huge splash and you're just violently shoving everything and everyone around you in your life, then you and people around you are going to feel like that little swimmer being sloshed around in the violent ocean. But if you are allowing yourself to be even, and when you start to go way up or way down, you just even it back out and get to as close as possible to dead even, then life has this really kind of satisfying ease to it. We want to live as often as possible as that easy wave just kind of sliding into place. And it comes in easy and it comes back out easy. So what we do to achieve this is just what we practice all the time in class: an even state of mind and even breath. When you focus on evening out the breath, that evens out your mind. The condition of your mind cannot be separated from the condition of your breath. If your breath is more even and slow and calm, your mind will be the same. And they say that you're born with a certain number of breaths in different cultures. I heard that this is what they said in China. I've never actually heard this when I was in China, but I'll say that this is what they say. You're born with a certain number of breaths. And when you use up all of your breaths, you die. That's it. So if your breath is slow and even, then you will live longer. That's just the way that it is. Whether you believe you're born with a certain number of breaths or not, there is certainly a connection that we can make through scientific observation. When you're breathing fast and shallow all the time and you're stressed out all the time, that stress on your body causes you to die earlier. So spend the time evening out and being the easy wave. We'll live longer. We'll kind of, slide a little bit further onto the shore, and we will experience that with as much ease as possible. So this is what we're going to practice tonight with your meditation. Do not get attached to a dead even breath. Do not get attached to a dead even heart rate. You might start to feel your heart rate speed up or your breath speed up. Okay, just let that go and come back to watching without judgment. It's when we judge that things have a tendency to get all out of whack. It's when we are really attached to the opposites. That's when we're attached to the separation of things, that it becomes a very uneven, difficult experience to meditate. But if we recognize that, we start to get attached to it, we let it go and just focus on this breath that we're in right now. And this breath is perfect. It is exactly as long or short or deep or shallow as it's supposed to be. And then you let that one go and you move on to the next one. Each breath coming in and out, just like a wave coming in and out. Each breath is like an entire lifetime. You're either paying attention to it and you're present to it, or you're not present to it and it just goes by like that. Sit comfortably.